Welcome to the January 2024 Preparedness Pantry Office Hours. Yay! Thank you for being here. So today I wanted to just take a minute and talk with you guys about the three different kinds of pantries that we should have. And the thing is, most of us think about just one kind of pantry. We have a pantry, it's a closet or a cupboard somewhere, and we stock it with stuff. And then you start taking the class and you discover that there's two kinds of pantries because we have our preparedness or overflow pantry, and then we have our everyday pantry. So the everyday pantry is usually the one that's in the kitchen. The preparedness or overflow pantry can be anywhere. It can be in the closet of a guest room. It can be under a bed. It can be in another space. I have had people tell me that they have furniture that has storage space in it, and they will use that to store some of their preparedness foods and that kind of thing. So that's certainly something, and we'll come back to that and talk about other areas in just a minute. But I also wanted to talk about the third kind of pantry, and that is your long-term storage pantry.
This episode is sponsored by The Kitchen Table, your ultimate destination for holistic nutrition and wellness information and more. I remember when my kids were young and the seasons went by so fast. I'd find myself staring down at the season ahead, realizing that my get in shape plans somehow just didn't happen. If you can relate to this, I have a solution for you. I've been running my 21-day nutrition reset for the last 10 years. This no diet dogma program is a common sense approach to reclaiming foundationally healthy habits, and you'll be amazed at how much you can shift in 21 days. I designed the curriculum based on my training as a nutrition educator and my passion for healthy eating as the ingredient guru. And now I'm offering it as part of the kitchen table. Inside the kitchen table, you'll have access to a wide range of programs, not only the 21-day nutrition reset, but also a preparedness pantry masterclass, a growing content library of ebooks, and so much more. Learn more at miraskitchentable.com.
So every now and then in the preparedness pantry section of the kitchen table, I will post a list when I notice that certain things are on sale, usually number 10 cans, because those are the ones that are good for 25 years. But anything that's good for 10 years or more, it can be an overflow pantry situation. Not an overflow, an extended pantry situation. The overflow pantry is your preparedness pantry. The extended is the long term, like you can buy cans of goods that are good for 25 years and just stock a few of those so that you have something. And I want to talk about the philosophy behind the three different pantries and why I've come up with this plan. The everyday pantry is the one that we are using to make our meals. It's how we feed ourselves. And it also includes our fresh food, things that we can't store, fruits, vegetables, dairy, that kind of thing. And when you go grocery shopping, except for the fresh food, you really should be shopping for your preparedness pantry, because you should be pulling things from your preparedness pantry into your everyday pantry, because if you go through the lessons, you'll remember that we're supposed to be rotating stuff, which means we're supposed to be using it. Part of the reason why I like to have an extended pantry is because there are certain things that I want to make sure if I needed them in an emergency situation, I would have them, and I don't want to have to worry about how they're packaged. For example, I have bags and jars of beans, and they're good for a long time, but I also know they're probably not good for 25 years because eventually they just get harder and harder to cook. And if I have them in a vacuum sealed number 10 can, then I know they're good for 25 years. Same thing with rice. Same thing with one of the things that I have two cans of this in my extended pantry. There is a vegetable stew that Augustin Farms sells that we like. And so I have two cans of that in case I need it. And I don't have a lot of cans in my extended pantry. I think there's 10. I should have checked before I did this recording, but I know there's rice, there's beans, there's apples, there's 2 cans of the vegetable stew. And there's a couple of other single vegetables. I think I have broccoli in there, so it's freeze-dried broccoli. So there's a few things, and that is just it's in a place, it's actually in a cabinet that's taller than I can reach without a ladder. But we know it's there. I have it written down in my book, and if we absolutely needed it, it would be there. The preparedness pantry is the one where, and I actually just this week started pulling apart my pantry again. Because I don't know if, well, Joanne, you weren't part of the group back then, but Donna, you have been part of the group for a while. 6 months ago, I pulled apart my pantry and I reorganized everything. It allows me to re-inventory in case I was in a hurry and I didn't write down something. It allows me to make sure that all of my cans have the date written on top of them. And I do that so that I can go through things. And I will share that when I went through, I discovered that I had 2 cans of canned tomatoes that have a best by date for November of 2023. So the date is passed. It doesn't mean that those tomatoes are not good. That's just the best by date. They're optimal by that date. Somehow they got shoved to the back of the drawer. And when I pulled everything out, I found them. And so they are now at the front of the drawer. And the next time I am making tomato anything, that will be the first thing that I grab. Theoretically, they're good anywhere from 2 to 5 years past the best by date, as long as the can is not dented, bulging, leaking, rusting, like anything that indicates there's something wrong with it. So I have no problem eating that. And the other thing with the preparedness pantry, the overflow pantry, is that is where I go when I am looking for inspiration about what do I need to use up, because that can sometimes help with meal planning. I look and I see, oh man, we have a lot of lentils. Maybe we need to be eating more lentils. I got too many or whatever. And again, I want to reiterate that the philosophy of the preparedness pantry masterclass is not that we are looking to store, years of food, except for the extended pantry. We're not trying to store 10 years worth of food in the basement. We're not going into zombie apocalypse prepper mode. And again, I have no problem with that. If people want to do that, that's fine. I'm simply advocating 14 to 30 days worth of food on hand so that we always have enough and we can always rotate through. And for anyone who's gotten the calendar, if you happen to look through it, and if you didn't, that's okay. You'll see it when you get there. And I don't even remember what months they're in because I created that calendar last year. There's a date in there that says make a meal just out of your pantry. See what you can make just out of what's in your pantry. Can you do it? And if you can't, then that means you have to reevaluate what's in your preparedness pantry, what's in your overflow pantry, because you should always be able to make a meal from that.
Does that include your refrigerator?
So great question. No, and I did not put that in the calendar because there wasn't room in the box. I'm talking about if your refrigerator was empty and you had to rely on just what was in your pantry, could you make a meal? So for example, in our case, for protein, we have legumes, several different kinds. We have canned fish because my husband eats fish, and we have canned chicken. I actually am looking at, I have used my pressure canner to can things that are not meat. And it's okay. It's like, it takes a long time. It takes an entire day by the time they pressure can everything, and you could only get so many jars in there. But I am thinking about possibly making some soups, like some chicken soups or, beef soup or whatever, and canning those, pressure canning them to see how that would work, because that would extend what would be in my in my preparedness pantry. And depending on how it works out, I would then consider doing a class on that for the group. Like that would be a separate class that we would have on pressure canning. Because I know I've talked before about dehydrating as a means of preserving food. I have not talked about canning or pressure canning. So those need to be added into the mix at some point. When it comes to how you are rotating, I really want to encourage you to get in the habit, like I said, aside from your fresh goods. So don't look at your everyday pantry and go, oh, I'm out of spaghetti sauce, pasta, whatever it is, grains, whatever you use on a regular basis. I want you to get in the habit of when it comes out of the preparedness pantry and goes into the everyday pantry, that's when you buy another one. For example, I just finished a bottle of vanilla. And so when I finished that, I took the vanilla that was in my preparedness pantry out, put that in my baking cupboard, and bought another one. Now, I also have a jar of vanilla that I've been steeping, but it's not quite ready. And I bought the vanilla to make sure that I had it because I use vanilla a lot. But I'm in the habit of replacing it. When it comes to mustard, I tend to buy them 2 at a time because our family just goes through so much. So I want to make sure I always have 2 mustards in the pantry because we use a lot of mustard. We put it on sandwiches. I put it in dishes. I make vinaigrettes with it. I do a lot of things with mustard. So for everybody's family, you have to figure out what the right fit is for what's in your pantry. And that's where I want you to begin the habit of looking at when you're doing your shopping to start thinking about, am I shopping for my everyday pantry or my overflow, my preparedness pantry? And then keep your eye out. There should be another sale coming up probably in the spring on number 10 cans. And I will again put a list in the preparedness pantry chat to let people know all the ones that are on sale. And when I do that, I list what it is, who it's by, and the regular price and the sale price. So you can see what a difference it is. And some of them are quite significant. They can be 30% or more off. So yes, Donna, again, you're muted.
Lots of action going on around here, and I'm trying to keep you all away from that. So do those Obasan cans, can they go like in an attic? Is there a temperature concern for storing them? I mean, I'm
So
not in Texas, so I wouldn't have a Texas attic. But
yeah, so the thing
I
is,
have a closet that has a hot water heater in it, and I was wondering if it could go in there or if it shouldn't.
if your hot water heater is wearing a jacket, which it should be anyway, because that makes it more efficient, then I would think that that's a fine place to store it.
Okay.
In Texas, I would not do an attic space because it just gets brutal here. When we lived in Connecticut, I did use my attic to store those kinds of cans, and they were fine.
Okay.
And sometimes we opened them and what was in it was fine.
Okay. So we have to be mindful, but not too concerned. I mean, not
Yeah,
overly cautious.
I don't
Okay.
recommend if the space is going to be too hot, too damp,
Mhm.
because you also don't want the metal seals to start to get rusty.
True. Yeah.
And then I also don't recommend outdoor storage, like an outdoor shed or things like that, because you never know what's going to get in there.
Okay. Good. Thanks.
So that's today's talk about the 3 different kinds of pantries that I encourage you to have, or at least the thinking about your pantry that I encourage you to have. So I'm sorry that Bridget didn't make it back. I guess her internet must have gone down where she is. I know sometimes that happens. Oh, wait, there she is. Bridget, you're back.
I am here. I was listening the whole time. I'm eating breakfast and didn't
Oh,
want to be a distraction, so
Oh, there you go. I thought you weren't there. So I'm glad that you were able to hear all that. That's great.
Yeah, if the internet went down, you wouldn't even see my name. I wouldn't even, maybe you couldn't see my name from
I
your
didn't.
vantage point. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
No,
I'm here and grateful. And I have a question.
yes,
Do you have a recommendation for a supplier of organic herbal tea, like peppermint, nettle,
I
um,
do.
bulk teas? Because I'm going to get away from tea bags. I bought this nice French press for myself for Christmas. And I'm going to start, making my own with like lavender and chamomile or whatever I want. But I would like your recommendation.
So my favorite bulk herb and tea supplier is Mountain Rose Herbs.
I
And
used to order from them
yeah, I love
like
them.
20 years ago. Thank you.
And one of the things that I like about them is a lot of their herbs, you can actually buy a quarter of a pound. So, remember that these are dried leaves.
Yeah.
And a pound can be a really huge bag because they're not very heavy. And so sometimes you just want to buy a little bit. And yes, the pound is cheaper, per ounce. But if you don't need that much, don't buy that much.
Thank you.
And I love that you're going to make your own blends. That's really fabulous. And there is, I think, a book. I will see if I can find it. And I also have a couple, I'll post them. Um, I'll put it together in a blog for
Nice.
my recipes. And then that way I can point you towards the blog.
I have a referral I can share with you all. I've bought herbal tea blends from them, mostly for medicinal use, like respiratory. But there's a company called St. Louis Herbs and Aromatics, I think, STL Herbs, in St. Louis. And I buy lots of different kinds of potions and things from them. They have good essential oils. They have good
Nice.
essential oil blends. When you said that about the big packages, Mira, it's what made me think of it, because you'll get these in like 2 ounce
Mhm.
whatevers, and so, but that's another STL Herbs, and I don't remember the name of the
I'll look
website,
it
but
up
it's
and put
close
it
to
in the
that.
notes.
Yeah, yeah. It's an independently owned store, and it's quite beloved in the St. Louis area. And
Nice.
I just have been ordering from them for years. So check it
That's
out.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I will
Mhm.
definitely check that out.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that is really helpful too is it's good to have a backup source, because sometimes your primary source may not have what you want. And if St. Louis Herbs also has certain blends or whatever, they may have something that's a little bit different. So it's always nice to try different blends and different formulations.
Mhm.
Yay. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, after you shared with us about the different things that are going into making tea bags, I thought, okay, that's going to be a lot of research. Why don't I just go bulk, you know,
Yeah.
natural, right?
So I
Bridget, I
love,
have one of those French presses that I've used for years, and I love it. I love loose tea so much
Mhm.
more than a tea bag. And it's thermal, so it stays hot. It's just, you're gonna love it. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then the other thing that I have, which I will do sometimes, I have a quart infusion filter. And I like that. I don't do it as much in the winter. I do it more in the summer, but I will infuse an entire quart of herbal tea. And then I can drink from that, usually as a cold tea, but that cold brew infusion, you get a lot of the aromatics and a lot of the benefit of the herbs out of it, which is great. If I wanted to, I could pour a cup and reheat it, or add some hot water to it. But those can be a really good way to do it too.
Oh, I love that. You're bringing back this herbal class I took when I lived in New York City. And I learned to make, I even made a plantain ointment.
Mm,
Infused, I gathered the plantain leaves and put them in olive oil and let it sit for like 6 weeks, and then strained out the leaves and maybe melted some beeswax or something. Anyway, this was like 30 years ago, but you're bringing back memories. I got to get back on this. Thank you.
yeah. Well, one thing that I like about herbal blends too that's really nice, for example, I have an allergy to ragweed. And so for me, drinking a lot of chamomile is not a good choice. And there are a lot of calmative blends that have chamomile in them. So buying that blend is not great. But I can then figure out my own formulation and replace it with something like valerian or linden or another calmative and have something that's really lovely.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So definitely good. Thank you for that, Donna. Thank you for sharing
You're
that.
welcome. Yeah, that's where I shop.
Does anybody have any questions? Is there anything I can answer for you or help you with today about preparedness?
I want you to describe the three pantries again. The
Okay.
kitchen, the preparedness, and the long term or the extended pantry. Just kind of
Yes.
in a nutshell. So I got
Okay.
it.
Sure. So your everyday pantry, your kitchen pantry is the one you cook from. And that is the one that you replenish fresh foods at the grocery store. But for packaged or dry goods, you replenish that pantry from your overflow or preparedness pantry. The overflow or preparedness pantry is the one where we store long-term goods that we want to have on hand to provide us with a 14 to 30-day food source for our family. Although I will say, because I went and bought tomato products, I probably have 3 months worth of tomato products on hand at the moment, but that's okay. There was a sale. The other one is the extended pantry, and that's where you would have, depending on what you want on hand, that tends to be the number 10 cans that are good for 25 years, and it is like your extreme emergency storage. And so you don't want a lot of cans in there. Like I said, I have 10. And so I've got rice and beans, and then the vegetable stew, and then a few things. Like I know we have, oh, I bought an extra can of blueberries last time they were on sale. So we have dried apples, we have blueberries, we have broccoli, and then we've got something else in there as well. But that's for like just good gracious, nobody knows what would happen, but if I absolutely needed it, I knew that I would have these number 10 cans and I could make food for my family. You know, if I couldn't get to the grocery store, or if something happened and there was an extreme shortage at the grocery store and I went through the 30-day supply that I had on hand in my house, I would still have something else. It's like your backup, basically.
Where do you keep your water? In that pantry?
So our water we have in the preparedness pantry, and we also have life straws. So for my
Oh,
family,
good idea.
our backup plan is that we have a 35,000 gallon pool in our backyard. We can't drink pool water because it has chemicals in it, but we can run it through the Berkey and then the life straw if we need to. So that's my situation. I recently did a consultation with someone who lives near a pond. And so for them, I recommended that they buy a Berkey and life straws. And then I've also shared, there's another filter company. It's in the Water Talk that we did that I don't remember, but they sell a storage can that filters at the same time. I'll put the link to that, the Water Talk. It's hard to store 2 weeks worth of water. And so generally I encourage people to have 3 to 5 days worth of water for whoever, because remember, it's a gallon per person, per pet, per day. And so that's a lot. So, you know, if there's 2 of you and a dog, like my house, times 3 days, that's 9 gallons of water. That's a lot of water to have on hand. Luckily, they have 10-gallon jerry cans. So that's great. But then what do you do beyond that? And that's where you have to have your secondary plan, which usually involves some sort of filtration and then knowing where you're going to source from. If you
Yeah,
don't have a secondary source, then you have to figure out a longer term storage,
Mhm.
which does mean more containers. Like they do sell huge 20-gallon, containers. It depends. And then there are other people who look at, cisterns or rainwater collection or different things like that. Rainwater is a little bit hard though, because I don't want anybody drinking water that comes off the roof. Because even if you filter it, there's just so much stuff on your roof. Like, I don't know, I personally have a hard time with that. If I was desperate, I probably would, but even after filtering, I don't know that roof water does it for me. Because it's asphalt, most roofs.
I think there's also a problem with the rainwater barrels that the water that's coming off of the roof is stored in. Because
Yeah,
it's plastics.
it's plastic, right?
And
Well,
it's
Yeah,
not
the most,
I think you're gonna have to have a metal roof to harvest the rainwater off it.
yeah. And most water containers are plastic, but they're not outside in the environment getting warmed up by the sun and then frozen, and so they're not releasing as much, you know?
rain barrels are, they're sitting outside the whole time.
No, I'm saying the jerry cans, like aquatainers, are also plastic, but
Mhm.
they're generally inside the house in a temperature controlled environment.
Right.
A rain barrel is sitting outside, like you said, it's a 90-degree day, that sucker's heating up, especially because most of them are black or dark green.
Yeah.
So they're going to absorb all that heat. Plus they're absorbing the, whatever's on the roof.
Yeah. I mean, in all fairness, they are not designed for drinking water storage. They are designed simply to capture and then for irrigation purposes.
Yes. And by the way, if anybody does not know, Joanne is an environmental attorney specializing in water. So
Yay!
Yeah, I know. I
Um,
know a little bit about water.
a little bit.
Thank you. I'm a environmental activist, like at
Oh,
least
good.
I was 30 years ago, but I care. So thank you for your work.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so that's where you have to figure it out, and so you have to figure out what your secondary source is. And for most people, depending on where you live, usually there's some kind of a source that you can tap into within a mile from your home. But then it's a matter of making it safe, because I do not recommend anybody drinks water direct from streams or ponds or anything like that without high quality filtration. And part of the reason that I like Life Straws is because they have done all kinds of studies and they get things like giardia and all different kinds of nasties that can be in the water. So just being mindful about that. Any other questions about pantries or preparedness?
Will you include how to get life straws?
Yes, I can. Do you happen to have a Costco near you?
I don't.
Okay, I was just asking because I recently bought a 4-pack at Costco. Um, but yeah, Life Straws are good. I will link to them. And that's in the Water Talk as well. I'll put a link into the Water Talk so that you can go back and review that one. You may not have been at that class, Bridget.
I don't think I was. I think I would
Yeah.
remember. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. One of the other things that I want to share from the preparedness pantry mindset is really thinking about managing what's in there. So, like, I encourage you to organize it in a way that makes sense to you, because like what I do may not make sense for you, but also to be mindful about how long things last or whatever. So, for example, for whatever reason, I got a lot of gifts of olive oil. So I now have several bottles of very fancy olive oils, which is lovely. And I need to keep that in mind and in my notebook so that I don't use the last, because I typically tend to buy my olive oil at Costco because I know it's what it says it is. You know, they've done tests and it's pure and whatever. But when that bottle's empty, I need to grab what's in my pantry already instead of just replacing the other one. And I also need to keep in mind that, you know, olive oil generally, they recommend that you not keep it more than 6 to 12 months. So I need to make sure that I'm being mindful about that because I happen to get a gift of that. In previous years, we've gotten gifts where people have sent us, you know, the foodie baskets and they come with these beautiful organic jams. And all of a sudden we've got 6 jars of jam and we just don't eat that much jam anymore, you know? So being mindful about what you've got. And if you happen to have too much of something, is there a way that you can use it? Are there recipes that you can use to use it up? I wound up making a lot of jam coffee cakes when I had to go somewhere and someone said, oh, bring something. I made a jam coffee cake, you know, because it was easy. And it gave us a way to use it up. But
I
that
think
kind
you have a
of
lot
built
of
that
salad
kind of
dressing in your future because that olive oil probably shouldn't be cooked with. It'd be a waste, right? If it's really that
yeah.
good.
Well, and you know, one of the things that I thought when I got to the third bottle was I should probably go back to the tablespoon a day that I used to do that I don't anymore. But it's really good for you to take a tablespoon of olive oil every day. It's good for your insides. So I'm thinking maybe I need to start doing that again because I've got enough. Um, but
Well,
yeah,
all I can say is this is perfect timing for me because, you know, Bridget, you may remember this, but I'm in the midst of a giant home, full whole home remodel, including the kitchen. And now our pantry turned out to be smaller than I thought it was going to be just because we filled the rest of the kitchen up with cabinets. But I thought, am I going to have to use that overflow pantry still? And now I realize, yes, I should have an overflow pantry. So
yes.
my smaller pantry, now you've reminded me, will be my kitchen pantry. And then I
Mhm.
have the overflow pantry. And now I've got this closet that we're going to end up, I'm going to be able to use for my long-term storage. So for me, this timing is just perfect.
Oh, that's
Really
great.
excited about it now.
Yeah. And I will share, you know, we're so conditioned to think of a pantry as like this one closet container area, whatever, in our kitchen. And that's our food space. But really, a long time ago, they had food everywhere. They had cheese cellars and wine cellars and, you know, butler's pantries that had things. And like it was all over the place and it got brought to the kitchen as needed. And when it comes to storage, like I said, I am a huge fan. If you have a guest room, and you don't have a lot of guests, or you can even use part of that, like maybe you can squeeze a little bookshelf in there and use that for storage. Why not? You know, your guests are going to probably go, oh, soup, you know, but they're, you know, how much room do they need to hang their clothes? I also, one of my other big favorites for the pantry is because I do pantry consultations for people where, you know, they will hop on the phone with me to talk about how to build a preparedness or overflow pantry, and they don't know where to store it because they're in very tight quarters. And one of my favorite unused spaces is over the door in closets. Nobody looks up. And that entire space there is completely wasted. And you could put a small shelf there and you can stack canned goods, boxed goods, whatever up there. It's out of the way as long as you know where it is. And then, like I said, under the bed, I'm a big fan of those. I mean, they sell them for storing Christmas ornaments and wrapping paper and stuff, but those wheelie under the bed things, you can get a lot of stuff in one of those. And so that's another great storage item. Yes,
I have one more question.
sure.
Talking about pantries. what do you decant to put in your pantry? Like, do you put your flour into a glass jar? What are all the things that you take out of their packages and put in
Yeah.
something else? And should we? Or is it just
So
my
I,
Facebook feed is filled with all this organize your kitchen stuff, and everybody's got these fancy plastic, which I don't want, but containers with their 27 processed food granola bars and all of that. But I just wondered, Mira, what you do,
yeah.
because I want to get my flour, which I don't use a lot, out of the paper.
Mm-hmm.
And what else should I think about?
And I will share that flour is one of the hard ones. I don't tend to have a lot of flour in the house. I do cook with it occasionally, but I mostly eat gluten-free. So I have gluten-free mixes, and I have one in my refrigerator and one in my preparedness pantry. It's a 5-pound bag. It goes in the freezer first, and then it just goes in the pantry in the bag. And then when I open it, it goes in the refrigerator, um, in the garage refrigerator,
In the bag that it came in?
in the bag that it came in.
Okay, okay.
Because it's already been made in that bag. And I'm like, for me to move it into a 1/2-gallon glass jar, which would be less plastic input. But the thing is, for me, it's going to be in a cold environment.
Mhm.
It's not going to be exposed to heat. And it's already been through the hottest process that might pull any molecules. So I just leave it in its bag.
But what a good idea to put it in the refrigerator, because now I have an extra refrigerator. So thanks. That's good suggestion.
Yeah. And
Okay.
then for other things, I will, like, for example, beans. If I buy a big bag of beans, I will open that up and I will put it in smaller jars. So I'll put them in a quart jar in my everyday pantry, and the other quarts go into my preparedness pantry. And so, I usually have a few jars of different kinds of beans. And then I have a replacement bag. And when I open the replacement bag is when I buy another bag.
Okay.
I should also mention, by the way, um, I will put the link to the blog post that I wrote about them. When I pull apart my pantry, I look at my pantry moth trap. And this time I had pantry moths in it, which means something got into my pantry. And usually would they come into your house, not because you have a dirty house, but because they came in from something you bought and they just happened to hatch. As I'm pulling everything out, I'm looking for signs of infestation and I'm not seeing anything, which is great. Otherwise, I have in the past had that where I have to haul everything out and scrub down the entire thing and then carefully sift through everything to make sure that there's, no little buggy trails or anything. There were a few in there. So I've replaced the trap, and I am being mindful as I'm reorganizing to look at all of the packages very carefully to make sure that I'm not seeing anything. And so far I haven't seen anything. So they may have just like come in and hatched and not bred because they got stuck on the little trap. But and that's another really good reason to try twice a year to reorganize. Because truthfully, I try to be as organized as I can. But there are times when I've been out running around all day. I've come home, I bought a whole bunch of things, and I just sort of open the door and I'm like, that goes on that side, that goes on that side. And I close the door of my preparedness pantry, I don't put it all away. Or I put cans in, I'm like, yeah, I'll label them later. And I should be better about that, but this is real life. Like, this is me. However, I know at least twice a year, I'm going to go through them. So that's how I stay on top of them. Any other questions? Does anybody else have any preparedness challenges that you're facing right now? Any concerns about winter weather or anything like that?
We have a lot
No?
of winter weather,
Yeah.
but we've got food too.
Yeah.
Joanne, I'm really glad to see you. I live in Pagosa Springs. So I hope you come to these calls often. I'm real curious to know everything you know.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Oh,
You're an environmentalist, environmental lawyer living in Denver, right? Didn't Mira say you live in Denver?
I do live in Denver, and
Yeah. Well, I'm down 6 hours away in Pagosa Springs.
yeah,
We don't get to Denver often, but
yeah.
it's nice to see you.
I was just down there in the fall looking at your pretty leaves.
Oh, we'll have to exchange information one of these days.
Okay.
Very cool. That would be fun. All right. Well, if nobody has any other questions, I have one more question for you, and then just a gentle reminder that next Monday is the Holistic Wellness Office Hours. So I hope to see you all there for that. So my question, I am looking at picking a topic for September's, last year, September is National Preparedness Month. I did the first aid preparedness seminar. And so I am looking at doing some kind of an event for September again. And I am trying to decide if you think it would be better for me to do a class on creating a bug out bag and what needs to go into that whole thing, or doing DIY meal in a jar. And I know people are probably going to go, I want both, but I need to know which one you want more. So do we want bug out bags or do we want meals in a jar? So if everybody could vote, I'm collecting votes for the next 4 weeks, and then I'm going to start building the class for September.
Well, I need a bug out bag, so I'll just throw that. That's on my to-do list.
Okay.
And I'll vote for do it yourself in a jar.
Okay. And Bridget, what do you vote for?
Oh, she's gonna win. She's gonna make it win.
Well, it's not a win because I'm going to ask everybody. Like, I'm going to
Just
ask every
teasing.
class, and I'm also going to put it out in the group.
Good.
By the way, I've been posting things in the front porch, and I didn't know if people have been seeing those, but that's where I was going to put that. So if you see that, feel free to vote there
Vote
as well.
early, vote often.
Yeah, vote early, vote
Right.
often. But I'll know that you voted, but it'll just help get other people to make their vote as well. And Bridget is away from AFK, as they say in the gaming world, away from keyboard. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for being here. It was great. I hope this was helpful for you. And yes, I am very much looking forward to seeing you guys next week for a great talk on holistic wellness. And oh, one more thing that I needed to tell you, because Donna, I think you had mentioned an interest in this. January 21st is a kickoff call for a group 21-day 21-day nutrition reset class. Because you're already in the kitchen table, you don't have to pay for anything. It's already included in your membership. If you have any friends who you think would like to come, it is $49. They will get the kickoff call, the wrap-up call, the 21 days, and I also have a little surprise for them after the 21 days. But we'll talk about that when we get there. But if you have any friends that you think would like to do that, let me know. And I can actually send you the page if you'd like to share that. But
Good.
we'll
That's
do
great.
it together. So that'll be great.
I have a question, Mira. What's a bug out bag? A bug?
I'm so glad you asked. Yay. So a bug out. So what happens is, in an emergency situation, you have to make a decision whether you stay or whether you leave. If you stay, the general recommendation is you have enough on hand. And in the 10 tips for emergency preparedness webinar, if you haven't watched that, I'd encourage you to please go watch it. 1 hour, very easy. And there's a nice little workbook that goes along with it. I encourage you to do 14 days of food on hand. I've since expanded that, given all the supply chain issues and everything that we've had, to 30 days. A bug out bag is if you have to leave. And the recommendation is to be able to bring 72 hours worth of stuff with you, because presumably within 72 hours, you can get somewhere where you are going to have access to other things. Either you're going to a family or a friend or a safer area or whatever. So what do you keep in a bug out bag that you can literally grab and go?
I vote for that.
Okay. That does seem to be winning so far. I have asked 7 people, and we have 5 votes for bug out bags and 2 votes for DIYs. But we'll see what happens. Anyhow, so yeah, that would be the class in September. And it would, I would teach on it, and then I would try to find 1 or 2 guest experts that I could bring in as well to talk about something related to bugging out. I have at least 1 person in mind, so I'm trying to reach out to him and see if I can get him to do an interview with me.
Thank you so much. I met you when I happened to see Dr. Tom's email on preparedness, and then I
Yeah.
attended your training through this window. So thank you so much. This is really
You're
rich. So
You're
helpful.
welcome. And Bridget, if you're not getting into the class and going through the preparedness classes, if you somehow were not able to figure out how to get in, or you couldn't figure out where everything was, please reach out to me. Because you have my email, and I will help you, because there's the 10 tips for emergency preparedness and its workbook, the Preparedness Pantry Masterclass, which is 3 classes, 6 bonus speakers, and the workbook. And then the First Aid Preparedness Seminar is a class and 3 guest speakers. And there's actually a surprise 4th bonus speaker coming in shortly because she wasn't available for the original class, talking about essential oils. So I'll be adding that. And it's Jody. I got Jody to come do a talk. Yeah,
That's great.
I know. It's fabulous. So there'll be 4 guest speakers for that one.
Wow, there's so much more there than I realized. Thank you for naming all that. Thank you.
Yeah, so you have to go into the learn section,
Okay.
not the community section. So in the learn session is all of the classes and the library. There's tons of stuff in there. If you get stuck or you need help getting any of it, please reach out. I'm here to help you.
Okay. Thank you so
All right.
much.
I'm glad you're reminded too, Mira, because I only did the first class. I haven't gone through all the extra materials. And this is my intention, is to get all prepared this January. So now I've
Mhm.
got something to do.
Yeah, and the workbooks are there, and
Yeah,
so
I've
I would
got it
print out
on
the
my
workbook.
to-do list to print out the workbook, all of that, but I haven't done all that stuff. So thanks. What value? That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad. All right. Well, thank you,
Okay.
ladies. It was great to see you. And like I said, if you have any friends who you think want to take the 21-day nutrition reset, I will send you a separate link with the, or actually I already put it in the front porch, but I'll put it in the kitchen table as well, in the kitchen table section, so you guys can see it, and just share the landing page with your friends and they can sign up, and that would be great. We'll all do it together.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
All
Thanks.
right. Bye,
Bye.
everybody. Take care. Bye. Thank you.